The story of John Lennon and Paul McCartney is one of the most extraordinary partnerships in the history of music. Together they formed the backbone of the Beatles, a band that not only changed the face of popular music but also left an indelible mark on global culture. Their songwriting collaboration produced some of the most iconic songs of the 20th century, from Hey Jude to Let It Be and Yesterday. Yet, behind the music was a relationship that was as tumultuous as it was transformative. By the time the Beatles disbanded in 1970, Lennon and McCartney's friendship had fractured, leading to years of public feuds and private resentment. But before his untimely death, on December 8, 1980, John Lennon finally opened up about his true feelings for Paul McCartney, offering a poignant reflection on their shared history. John Lennon and Paul McCartney first met on July 6, 1957, at a church fete in Woolton, Liverpool. Lennon, then 16, was performing with his skiffle group, the Quarrymen. McCartney, just 15, was introduced to Lennon by a mutual friend, Ivan Vaughan. Impressed by McCartney's ability to play and tune a guitar, Lennon invited him to join the band. From that moment, a partnership was born that would change the course of music history. In the early days, Lennon and McCartney were inseparable. They spent hours together, writing songs, practicing, and dreaming of fame. Their shared love for rock and roll and their competitive drive pushed them to create music that was innovative and heartfelt. Songs like Love Me Do and Please Please Me were early examples of their collaborative genius. As the Beatles rose to fame in the early 1960s, Lennon and McCartney became the driving force behind the band's success. The mid-1960s were a period of unparalleled creativity for Lennon and McCartney. They complemented each other perfectly. Lennon's raw, introspective style balanced McCartney's melodic, optimistic approach. Together, they wrote songs that defined a generation, from the infectious energy of She Loves You to the poetic depth of In My Life. Their partnership was built on mutual respect and a shared vision. We were like two halves of a whole, Lennon once said. Paul had this incredible knack for melody, and I brought the edge, the rawness. Together, we were unstoppable. But as the Beatles' fame grew, so did the pressures. The constant touring, media scrutiny, and personal differences began to strain their relationship. By 1966, the Beatles had stopped touring, and the band members began to pursue individual interests. Lennon's experimentation with drugs and his growing relationship with Yoko Ono further distanced him from McCartney. The late 1960s marked the beginning of the end for the Beatles, and for Lennon and McCartney's friendship. Creative differences, financial disputes, and personal conflicts created a rift that seemed impossible to bridge. Lennon's growing involvement with Yoko Ono, whom he married in 1969, was a particular point of contention. McCartney felt that Ono's presence in the studio disrupted the band's dynamic, while Lennon saw her as a source of inspiration and support. The recording of the White Album, 1968, and Let It Be, 1970, highlighted the growing tensions. Arguments in the studio became more frequent, and the once close partnership between Lennon and McCartney began to unravel. By the time the Beatles officially disbanded in 1970, their relationship had reached a breaking point. In the years following the Beatles' breakup, Lennon and McCartney engaged in a very public feud. They traded barbs in interviews and through their music. Lennon's song How Do You Sleep from his 1970 album Imagine was widely interpreted as a scathing attack on McCartney, with lyrics like The Only Thing You'd Done Was Yesterday, and Since You've Gone, You're Just Another Day. McCartney in turn responded with subtle digs in his own songs. The media fueled the rivalry, portraying Lennon and McCartney as bitter enemies. But beneath the surface, there was still a deep connection. We were like brothers, Lennon later admitted. Brothers fight, brothers argue, but there's always a bond that can't be broken. In the late 1970s, John Lennon stepped away from the music industry to focus on his family. During this period of introspection, he began to reassess his relationship with McCartney. In one of his final interviews, conducted just days before his death, Lennon opened up about his true feelings. Paul and I, we were like brothers, Lennon said. We fought, we argued, we competed, but at the end of the day, there was a love there that nothing could break. We created something magical together, something that will outlive us both. Lennon also acknowledged the role their rivalry played in their success. We pushed each other to be better. Without Paul, I wouldn't have been half the songwriter I was, and I think he'd say the same about me. He expressed regret over the way their relationship had deteriorated. I wish we'd handled things differently. We were young, we were arrogant, and we let our egos get in the way. But I'll always love Paul. He's a part of me. John Lennon's tragic death in 1980 left the world in shock and robbed music of one of its greatest voices. In the aftermath, Paul McCartney paid tribute to his former bandmate, describing him as a great man who changed the world. Over the years, McCartney has continued to honor Lennon's memory, often speaking fondly of their time together in the Beatles. The bond between Lennon and McCartney, though fraught with conflict, remains one of the most enduring partnerships in music history. Their songs continue to inspire new generations, and their story serves as a reminder of the power of collaboration and the complexities of human relationships. Before his death, John Lennon's reflections on Paul McCartney revealed a deep sense of respect and affection that transcended their public feuds. While their relationship was far from perfect, it was undeniably profound. Together, Lennon and McCartney created a legacy that has stood the test of time, proving that even the most complicated bonds can produce something truly extraordinary. As Lennon once said, "You don't get relationships like that often in a lifetime. Paul was my brother, and I'll always love him for that."